A sapphire legacy is forged in the deepest blue moments of life, preserving the wisdom of the past for the future. Join us as we explore the stories of those who built something eternal in a world that is constantly changing. Hit subscribe now and help us protect the light.
The moment my son looked me in the eyes and told me he loved me, something in my chest told me he was lying. My name is Gerald. I'm 67 years old. Retired, after 31 years as a high school history teacher in Columbus, Ohio. I know how to read people. 30 years in a classroom teaches you that faster than anything else on earth. And that evening, standing in my own kitchen, watching my son pour me a cup of coffee with that wide, careful smile, the one he'd been wearing more and more lately, I felt something I hadn't felt since my wife passed 4 years ago. I felt afraid, but I pushed it down, the way you do when the alternative is too painful to consider. Let me start from the beginning, because none of this will make sense unless you understand who I was before that night. Before everything changed, I spent my whole working life being careful. My wife Eleanor and I never took big vacations, never drove new cars, never ate at expensive restaurants just because we could. We clipped coupons. We fixed things instead of replacing them. When Eleanor was diagnosed with ovarian cancer 6 years ago, the medical bills were staggering. But we managed barely because we had savings. Real savings. The kind that took a lifetime to build. When she passed, I was left with the house in Columbus, a modest retirement account, and roughly $400,000 in savings that Eleanor and I had protected for decades like it was sacred. Because to us, it was. It represented every sacrifice. Every, not this year. Every birthday dinner cooked at home instead of at a restaurant. It represented her, my son. Derek was 38. He worked in real estate, or so he told me. The truth was, Derek had never quite found his footing. He jumped from job to job through his 20s. Borrowed money he didn't fully pay back. And married a woman named Vanessa who, in my honest estimation, had never once looked at me without calculating something. She had sharp eyes and a soft voice. And that combination had always made me uneasy. But he was my son, my only child. So I told myself the unease was just the natural friction between a father and a daughter-in-law. I told myself I was being unfair. That was my first mistake. About 8 months before that kitchen conversation, Derek started coming around more often. He and Vanessa would bring dinner on Sundays. He'd ask about my health, my plans, whether I'd thought about simplifying. That was the word he kept using. Simplifying. As in, did I really need a 4-bedroom house for just one person? As in, wasn't managing all those accounts getting complicated at my age? I told him I was fine. The house was paid off. The accounts were easy to manage. I wasn't struggling. He'd nod, smile, that careful smile, and change the subject. Then one Sunday in March, he sat down across from me at the kitchen table and told me he had something exciting to share. He and Vanessa had found a beautiful assisted living community about 40 minutes outside the city. Not a nursing home. He insisted a senior lifestyle community. Golf course, pool, organized activities, wonderful medical staff on site. You'd love it. Dad, he said, you've been alone in this house for 4 years. You deserve to enjoy your retirement. I told him I was enjoying it just fine. He leaned forward. We've already toured it. Put your name on a wait list. They have an opening coming up in 2 months. Something dropped in my stomach. You put my name on a wait list without asking me. We wanted to surprise you. Vanessa reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. We worry about you, Gerald. We just want you to be taken care of. I looked at my son. He was nodding slowly, watching me with those careful eyes. I said I'd think about it. That night, after they left, I sat in Eleanor's chair by the living room window, and I let myself think the thought I'd been refusing to think for months. My son wanted me gone, not just relocated. Gone. Out of the picture. Out of the house. Away from my accounts. Away from any ability to see clearly what was happening around me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in that chair until 3 a.m. And somewhere in those dark hours I made a decision. I was not going to react. I was not going to confront. I was going to watch. And listen. And find out exactly what I was dealing with before I made a single move. 31 years of teaching teenagers had taught me one thing. Above all else, never let them know you know. The next morning I called my bank. I asked about any recent inquiries on my accounts. The woman on the phone hesitated slightly before telling me there had been a request 2 weeks prior for account information from someone claiming to be my financial advisor. I didn't have a financial advisor. My hands were steady when I hung up. I was surprised by that. I didn't call Derek. I called a private investigator instead, a woman named Patricia, whom a retired colleague had used during a messy divorce. I told Patricia what I suspected and gave her 2 weeks to look into my son's finances, his wife's background, and any legal activity connected to my name. She called me back in 11 days. What she found was worse than I'd imagined. And I had imagined quite a bit. Derek and Vanessa were drowning in debt. Not the ordinary kind, but the reckless kind. Failed real estate ventures. A lawsuit from a business partner. Credit card debt in 6 figures. They had consulted with an elder law attorney 4 months ago. The attorney had prepared documents, a power of attorney, and a financial management agreement that, once signed, would give Derek full control over my assets. The senior lifestyle community wasn't just a way to get me out of the house. It was the first step in a process designed to separate me from everything Eleanor and I had built. The house would be sold. The accounts would be managed. I would be in a facility 40 minutes away, probably confused about why my statements didn't look right. Probably told it was just routine restructuring. I sat in Patricia's office on a Tuesday afternoon and read through her report twice. Then I folded it carefully, put it in my jacket pocket, and thanked her for her work. She looked at me with something like concern. Gerald, do you have someone you can talk to? A lawyer? A trusted family member? I smiled. I'm working on it. The reason I hadn't fallen apart, the reason I was sitting there calm instead of devastated, was because of a man named Howard. I'd met Howard 6 weeks earlier at a grief support group at our local community center. I almost didn't go. A former colleague had been recommending it for 2 years, and I'd always found a reason to decline. But in January, in the middle of a particularly quiet and hollow week, I finally showed up. Howard was 71. Vidover. Like me. Former accountant. Retired. Lived alone in a house on the east side. He had the kind of stillness about him that only comes from surviving something enormous. His wife had passed 3 years ago. His adult daughter barely called. He'd come to the group for the same reason I had. Not because he expected to feel better, but because he was tired of silence. We started having coffee after the meetings. Then lunch. Then long Tuesday afternoons on his back porch, talking about nothing important and everything that mattered. Howard was the first person I told about my suspicions even before Patricia. He didn't panic. He didn't tell me I was being paranoid. He listened, asked careful questions, and then said something I've thought about many times since. Gerald, he said, a man who spent 30 years teaching other people's children deserves at least one person in his corner. Let me be that person. I told him what Patricia had found on a Wednesday evening over coffee at his kitchen table. He read through the report the same way I had slowly. Twice. Then he set it down. Okay, he said. What do you want to do? That was the moment I understood that Howard was different from most people. He didn't tell me what I should do. He didn't assume I was a victim waiting to be rescued. He asked what I wanted. What I wanted was justice. Not chaos. Not a screaming confrontation in my kitchen. I wanted my son to face real, documented, the legal consequences, and I wanted to protect what Eleanor and I had built before a single dollar of it disappeared. Howard had spent 40 years as an accountant. He knew financial documents the way I knew primary sources. Over the next 3 weeks, we worked together carefully. I contacted a different attorney, an elder law specialist Patricia recommended, and had her review everything quietly. I had the locks on my house changed. I contacted my bank directly, appeared in person with my attorney, and put additional authorization requirements on every account. Nothing could be moved, transferred, or accessed without my physical presence, and a second form of verification. Then I waited. Derek called in early May, cheerful and warm, to tell me the spot at the community had officially opened up. We'd love to take you for a tour this weekend. Dad, see what you think. That sounds wonderful. I said, I've been thinking about it a lot. Actually, I could hear the relief in his voice. Really, that's great. Dad, that's really great. Can we make it Sunday? I'd love to bring a friend. If that's okay. An old colleague. He's been helping me think through the financial side of things. A brief pause. Of course, the more the merrier. That Sunday, Howard and I rode together to the tour. It was, genuinely, a beautiful facility which made it more painful, not less. The kind of place that would have been wonderful under different circumstances. The kind of place Eleanor might have liked. Derek and Vanessa met us in the lobby. All warmth and wide smiles. Vanessa hugged me. Derek shook Howard's hand. During the tour, Howard asked precise, knowledgeable questions about financial management, resident autonomy, asset protection. I watched Derek's face as Howard spoke. The smile stayed in place. But something behind his eyes shifted, recalibrating, calculating. Afterward, in the parking lot, Derek pulled me aside while Vanessa talked with Howard. Dad, I wanted to mention the attorney we worked with can help with the paperwork. Make the transition smooth. We could sit down this week and just review what needs to be signed. I looked at my son for a long moment. At his face. I looked for Eleanor in it the way I sometimes did the shape of his jaw. The way his ears sat. I found her there. I always did. I'll have my attorney review anything before I sign. I said. The smile didn't move. But his eyes did. Of course. He said. Whatever makes you comfortable. Dad. That night, I called Patricia and told her it was time. What happened over the following 3 weeks was quiet and methodical. My attorney filed a formal complaint with the state bar regarding the elder law attorney Derek and Vanessa had used, citing the preparation of predatory documents, targeting a vulnerable adult. Howard provided a detailed financial analysis of the documents as a supporting exhibit. Clean, precise. The kind of work that only comes from decades of expertise. I sat for a recorded statement with an attorney from Adult Protective Services. I brought every document, every bank inquiry record, every note I'd written since March. I was calm during the entire session. Patricia had told me once that in her experience, the most effective victims, her word, not mine, are the ones who arrive prepared and unemotional. I intended to be exactly that. Derek was interviewed by Adult Protective Services in mid-June. I wasn't there. But Patricia told me afterward that he had maintained calmly, consistently, that everything had been done out of concern for my well-being, that I was becoming forgetful, that he and Vanessa had simply wanted to help. My attorney submitted the recordings of our phone calls, the ones where Derek had referenced the paperwork he expected me to sign. The ones where Vanessa had mentioned, in passing, what my house might sell for in the current market. There is a moment in every legal proceeding, Patricia told me, where the other side realizes the ground has shifted beneath them. That moment came in late June, when Derek's own attorney advised him to stop talking. By July, the formal findings had come back. The documents Derek and Vanessa had prepared were declared fraudulent instruments intended to facilitate financial exploitation of an elderly adult, a felony under Ohio law. Derek was charged. Vanessa was charged as a co-conspirator. The attorney who had prepared the documents surrendered his license pending a disciplinary review. I heard the news on a Thursday afternoon. Sitting on Howard's back porch, the weather was warm. His tomato plants were doing better than expected. He handed me a glass of iced tea, and we sat for a while without saying much. "How do you feel?" he asked eventually. I thought about it for a moment. Not about the charges. Not about Derek's face when he'd realized what was happening. I thought about Eleanor. About the chair she used to sit in by the window. About all the years we had spent being careful so that this, right here, a quiet afternoon, a glass of cold tea, a good man sitting nearby would be possible. I feel like myself, I said. Howard nodded. That was enough. There are things about this I will never fully resolve. My son is facing a felony charge. He is the child I drove to soccer practice. The boy I sat with through fevers and nightmares and a broken arm in the 5th grade. I do not know how to hold that alongside what he tried to do. I'm not sure I'm supposed to know. I think some things exist in permanent contradiction. And the honest thing is to let them. What I do know is this. The money he tried to take was never just money. It was 30 years of Eleanor saying not this year. It was the trip to Italy we never took because we decided to fix the roof instead. It was the dress she wore on our anniversary that she'd found at a consignment shop and been so proud of. It was every ordinary Tuesday that added up to a life. He didn't understand that. And maybe that's the saddest part. People sometimes ask me whether I'm angry. The answer is yes, but not in the way they expect. I'm not angry at Derek the way you're angry at a stranger. I'm angry the way you're angry at a drought or a disease. At something that took root in a person you loved and grew into something unrecognizable. I don't know when it happened. I don't know what I could have done differently. I've stopped trying to figure that out. Because I've learned that some questions don't have answers. Only directions to keep walking in. Howard and I still have coffee every Tuesday. The grief support group is still meeting. Still going. I still live in the house on the same street in Columbus, Ohio. The locks are still changed. And I've decided they'll stay that way. Last month, on what would have been my and Eleanor's 41st anniversary, I finally made the reservation for that dinner. We always talked about the good Italian place across town that we'd driven past for 20 years, saying someday. I took Howard. We split the tiramisu. It was, as Eleanor would have said, absolutely worth the wait. I am 67 years old. I am still here. I am still standing. And I'm not going anywhere.